Strategy and Tactics is a wargaming magazine now published by Decision Games, notable for publishing a complete new wargame in each issue. Beginnings. Strategy and Tactics got its start in January 1967 under the auspices of its original editor, Chris Wagner, offering what he saw as a better alternative to Avalon Hill's gaming magazine, The General. Strategy and Tactics began life as a wargaming fanzine published by Wagner, at first in Japan, then moving to the United States with Wagner. Graphic designer Redmond Simonson was hired to improve the quality of the zine. When subscribership stagnated, debts began to accrue. Jim Dunnigan created SPI in order to save Strategy and Tactics. Dunnigan had been a contributor to the magazine since Strategy and Tactics number 2, and when Wagner was having financial difficulties with the magazine, he sold Dunnigan the rights for $1. A persistent rumor that Dunnigan had purchased S&T from Wagner for $1, and that furthermore the dollar was not paid until much later, was confirmed by Wagner during an interview printed in S&T issue number 83. Dunnigan era. Dunnigan set up shop in a windowless basement in New York City's Lower East Side, and published his first issue from there. Strategy and Tactics number 18. Starting with that issue, every issue included a new wargame. Albert Noffy became an associate editor in 1969. The first game published in issue number 18 was Crete. Not only did this represent a break from the cautious policy of Avalon Hill in publishing only 1 or 2 games per year, but the need for new game designs spurred research into many of the lesser-known corners of military history. Despite the diversity in themes, the style of the games was fairly consistent. They predominantly used a hex grid for the maps, and many rule concepts such as zones of control were repeated in many games. In addition to the games, the magazine featured many articles on military history, many of them notable for applying modern quantitative analysis to battles that had traditionally been described in a narrative, heroic style. Avalon Hill continued to produce more than just war games, priding itself on other themes, such as party games, sports titles, and children's games. Dunnigan's focus remained primarily on military history, and he felt that there was a market for detailed historical articles as an accompaniment to detailed and accurate games. S&T now embarked on providing 6 new games a year, and at a much lower cost per game than was to be found elsewhere, with the magazine itself almost being a bonus. There was no middleman in the form of a local games store. Subscribers got their games delivered right to their homes. Circulation of the magazine was substantial, and games that might not otherwise sell went to subscribers automatically, eclipsing expected independent sales of most titles. SPI also benefited from having the magazine as an advertising vehicle for boxed games, sold directly or through local game stores. In 1972, Strategy and Tactics spun off Moves magazine, which focused more on the play of the games. S&T's circulation exceeded that of Avalon Hill's The General by the mid-1970s, improving its physical appearance dramatically under the guidance of Redmond Simonson, as die-cut counters, printed on both sides in full color, became the norm. They were included in the magazine games, as were 2-color and finally full-color maps. S&T eventually made its magazine games available for purchase in stores with standard boxes, dice and counter trays, and also sold boxes and counter trays separately for the convenience of subscribers who wanted to store their subscriber game components in something other than the envelope the magazine had been delivered in. By the mid-1970s, SPI's annual income rose to the 6-figure range, with paid staff numbering as many as 40 people, and with 40-plus games being produced through both the magazine and boxed sales annually. Competition began to spring up, with many new companies appearing in the mid to late 1970s. Wargaming was reaching its high-water mark, just as the release of Squad Leader by Avalon Hill took the wargaming world by storm. Such faith was placed in the future of the industry that a Game Designers Guild was even created, in the hope that it just might be possible to earn a comfortable living providing war games to the public. Dunnigan's departure. However, despite annual income declared at $2 million, SPI's sales declined, and while monetary income remained constant, increasing inflation eroded the company's profits. Dunnigan's departure in the late 1970s led to internal struggle at SPI in 1980. Chief among SPI's problems was poor marketing. Howie Barash's departure as marketing manager in the late 1970s was never properly rectified, and the founder of S&T, Chris Wagner, who was now a management consultant, was brought back into the fold to address SPI's marketing problems. He found that many sales representatives, previously independently commissioned by SPI, had no idea they were still representing the company, and some didn't even realize the company was still in operation, as no one had been in touch with them for several years. In 1980, Strategy and Tactics spun off Ares magazine, which was focused on science fiction and fantasy. TSR. Financial mismanagement also cost SPI money, and a recession didn't help matters. Negotiations began with Avalon Hill and then TSR, Inc., for a buyout. By the time of the buyout in 1982, SPI was selling, it is estimated, some 60 to 70% of all war games in the world. Avalon Hill remained a bigger company, but only because it sold many more sports and general interest games than war games. By this point, S&T boasted 30,000 subscribers, and the magazine was truly the flagship of SPI. The popularity of S&T reached the point where SPI began publishing a second magazine, Moves, that consisted primarily of articles on winning strategies for playing SPI games and additional scenarios for them. A third magazine, Ares, devoted to science fiction and fantasy games and including one in each issue, was also published for a time. One innovation of S&T was its feedback system, in which readers could answer various multiple-choice questions on a return card, whose data would then be entered into a Burroughs mini-computer for analysis. Thus S&T always had good information about which games readers were looking for. When TSR purchased SPI in 1982, the company did not honor lifetime subscriptions to Strategy and Tactics. SPI unfortunately had no assets to its name when the takeover occurred, but there were over 1,000 subscribers who had made a significant payment for a lifetime subscription to S&T, meaning that they were entitled to all future issues without any further payment. These subscribers were informed that their subscriptions would not be honored. People who had placed pre-release, paid orders for certain games that had been in development were informed that they would receive neither the game they had paid for nor a refund of the money they had paid for it. TSR saved money in the short term, but alienated its best customers. SPI's design staff moved on to Avalon Hill, where they set up a subsidiary company based in New York, called Victory Games. It produced many unique and popular titles, which by the late 1980s were outselling even Avalon Hill games. TSR continued making games, hoping to recoup its investment in SPI, but despite a healthier distribution chain than SPI had enjoyed, its war game line was never successful. S&T magazine was eventually sold to 3W, a small company which published the Wargamer magazine, a direct competitor. By this time, other companies were also stepping up production, and a splintered market ensured that the days of selling 50,000 copies or more of a title were gone. Publishers became happy to sell 10,000 copies, with 20,000 being considered phenomenal. TSR produced issue number 91 to number 111 and then sold the rights to 3W. 3W Indecision Games. 3W published the magazine from number 112 to number 139. It was during this decline that 3W continued its publication of S&T, and James Dunnigan returned for a brief stint as editor of the magazine. Although circulation began to increase again, subscriptions never recovered fully, and most sales were through game stores and not subscriptions, which meant third-party retailers cut into profits. Sales were also no longer guaranteed. 3W's Keith Poulter got out of the business, and in 1991 Strategy and Tactics was sold to Decision Games, which has been publishing the magazine since issue number 140. Since issue number 176, Decision Games has also offered a cheaper, newsstand version without the wargame that comes in every regular issue. According to the official website, by issue number 216, more copies of the magazine edition were being produced than the game edition. In 2003, Decision Games spun off Strategy and Tactics Press as a sister company for magazine and media development. In 2008, World at War magazine was begun, which covers World War II. In 2012, Modern War magazine began, which covers post-World War II military history. Strategy and Tactics continues to cover all periods in history, and so the periods covered may overlap. As S&T reached its 40th year as a professionally produced magazine, as opposed to a fanzine, it laid claim to being the longest continually published wargame magazine. S&T also survived many of its competitors, including Command, which also came with a complete game in each issue, and which was created by Bomber when he left 3W. Bomber named his publishing company XTR, a reference to Julius Caesar's decision to cross the Rubicon, which he used in this case regarding his future relationship with Dunnigan and 3W upon leaving S&T. However, Dunnigan is long gone, S&T is no longer published by 3W, and the masthead of the NOV, December 2008 issue of S&T listed Bomber as assistant editor and as one of the magazine's 4 copy editors. Awards and value. Strategy and Tactics 113 Charles S. Roberts, Origins Awards between 1974 and 2009, and in 1997 the magazine was inducted into the Adventure Gaming Hall of Fame. Back issues of Strategy and Tactics are highly valued by wargame collectors, and some have become quite expensive. S&T magazine games that have not been played and have counter sheets intact are worth much more than played games.